Okay, Richard Dawkins is fascinated with religion like it's Star Trek or something.
I think we should look at the history of religion and be fascinated by it.
Just like we look at Star Trek.
But I don't think that religion has anything...
That's not true. It has tons of useful things to teach us. First of all, if God exists, then it would obviously be horribly important to know what God's like. Second of all, if, let's say, the Muslim concept of heaven and hell is, correct, that would be, pretty important to know, how to not go to hell. Second of all, and really this is the stinger, atheism destroys science. Christianity created science. This is how atheism destroys science. For most people, atheism would not just mean that there is no God, but they would also say what is really called naturalism. They would say there is nothing supernatural. There's only the physical. If that's the case, then when you love someone or hate someone, that's just a chemical reaction. That would mean that you don't make choices. In other words, hydrogen and oxygen don't decide if they might want to bond this time. If they bump into one another, hydrogen and oxygen bond and they form water. Okay? If your brain is just a more complicated version of that, then theoretically, if we could know where all the particles in your brain, what velocities they have, what they'll bump into, and what chemical properties they have, then we could determine everything you would do and everything you would think. That's called determinism, and it leads to reductionism, which is the idea that you just reduce to just physical matter. And the reason this destroys science is because it's very important that scientists be honest at all times. Like, what if global warming is fake? What if Adderall isn't actually safe? What if cell phones do cause cancer? Obviously I don't think any of those things, are something we should be worried about, but if scientists don't have control over whether or not they're honest, then who knows? And this is the thing, if they don't have free choice, if their actions are just predetermined by chemical reactions, then they are not in control over whether or not they're honest. The chemical reactions are in control. In fact, there would be no scientist. The scientist just is a chemical reaction. But see, here's the thing. Any theory you may suggest for why the chemical reaction in the scientist's brain causes the scientist to be honest could be caused in your brain by a chemical reaction. So whatever basis you come up with for why the chemical reaction, causes you to be honest, would eventually could just be another idea caused by the chemical reaction. So that's what we call, circular reasoning. Atheists love to point Christians out as doing it, but atheists do it too, apparently. And that's why atheism destroys science, whereas Christianity created science, because the basic idea was, on the basis, when science was created, what they said was, God created the world and mankind, and told mankind to manage the world. Therefore, mankind doesn't have to fully understand the world to manage it. I've got more about that on my other channel, so please watch this video. If that is confusing to you or overwhelming to you, just watch that other video. Alright. That's not one of the main reasons. Most people's reason goes at the very center of who they are. It's not just like some curious look at life forms.
One of the main reasons
Well,
why
he's right
people
about
are
that.
religious
There's a ton of evidence for evolution.
by the apparent design of
But
things.
it is not to say that that
Destroyed by
defeats people's main reason for believing
any
in
book
God. Because
biobiologists
most people
about
wouldn't
evolution
say their reason for believing in
to
God
see
is
how
because they
they
look at
would be
living things.
persuaded
So he
by
set up a weak
But
version
this is just
of
absolutely crap.
a
There's no-
theist, a person who
there's
believes in
no doubt
God, and then he's
about
destroyed
It's
it.
not a controversial issue. It's completely certain. It's as certain.
No, that's a different level of certainty. We observe that. Evolution is a theory based on observed evidence. Okay. Yeah. Well, now hold on, Richard. No.
The fact that
Okay, here's the
Earth and
thing.
the other
He's
planets
criticizing people for
orbit the
saying
sun.
that the Earth is less than 10,000 years old, and what they're doing is they're
More than
saying
40%
science
of the
will
American
shift
population of the human
and one day meet where we're
think that
at,
the world
and we believe
is
what we
less than
believe because we
10,000
believe the Bible.
years old.
This is the thing.
And that's it.
Richard
That's a shocking
does the
thing.
exact same thing
Shows
when it comes to the Big Bang.
profound
Richard
ignorance.
actually,
It sounds very
this man
laudable,
right here,
actually.
actually believes that, obviously, okay, so the Big Bang Theory is problematic for atheists because essentially what it says is the universe hasn't always been there. So there's only three explanations for the universe. Something supernatural created it, it came into being, it just started existing for no reason at all, or alternatively, it's just always been there, and maybe it's gone through stages or changes, but it's always been there. Alright, now, the Big Bang Theory essentially has ruled out that third option. It hasn't always been there. It has a birthday 13.7 billion years ago. What Richard's, so that leaves you with it popped into being for no reason at all, or something supernatural created it. So, what Richard says is one day the science of the Big Bang will be refuted and there will be a new science of how the universe has come into be the way it is today, and it will be more of an evolution thing. And he says this on the basis of some philosophical reasoning that he has. I'm not kidding. So the thing is, Richard, you want to have your cake and eat it too. You want to criticize Christians for doing the exact same thing you do. Science shifts, and it's okay for science to shift as long as you have a good reason for why you're holding out. His philosophical reasons, I'll just go ahead and tell you, are terrible. But whatever. He's right about that. There's no strong science right now to support young Earth creationism, so you shouldn't really teach it in the school because it's not in the science class. What? This is absurd. This is just ridiculous because Richard is famous for criticizing people for being Christians because he says the only reason you're a Christian is because you happen to have been brought up in a Christian country. But if you're brought up in India, you'd be a Hindu. If you're brought up in Saudi Arabia, you'd be a Muslim. If you're brought up in Germany in the time of the Vikings, you'd be believing in Wotan and Thor. And that's what he said. If you don't believe it, look up Richard Dawkins, What If You're Wrong? It's a famous video. Now the thing is, he's criticizing people and he's saying, you just believe that because that's what your parents taught you to believe. Well, Richard, you apparently were introduced to evolution by your dad and started this. Instead of saying you just believe it because that's what your parents taught you to believe, when it's you don't say that. You say it started a roller coaster of me, deciding there's no God. It's this wonderful roller coaster when you do it, but it's, oh, you just believe that. That's nonsense when someone else does it. No, he didn't. I explained that already. You can look at my video.
Before that,
atheism defeats the human ability to think.
But it was quite difficult because you had no good
That's
explanation.
thinking is a problem for atheism. In atheism, darling, I love you is darling, I'm having a chemical reaction.
There are other reasons for being religious.
Oh, he's just gonna briefly mention that there might be some other reasons other than the little one that he wants to pick on that's easy for him to shoot down. The evolution one. Oh, there might be other reasons. Look at these people. Their reasons for believing in God go to the very center of who they are. Look at that. Look at these people. It might be just a little bit more. But the main reason is because life looks designed. Oh, is that so, Richard? You sure you're not just, creating a weak version of your opponent?
By Darwinism, but it's quite
No, it
wrong
does. Well, science doesn't
to
reduce us,
believe
but
that
the idea that science
science
explains everything,
reduces
by,
humanity, that science
in
somehow
other
gives you
words,
a bleak,
science can only study the
cold,
physical.
empty,
It can't study the supernatural.
barren view of
So, if you think that science is the only source of knowledge, then you'll think the physical is all that there is. And if you think the physical is all that there is, then you are a chemical reaction, and that leads to reductionism. So that scientism reduces us. Science doesn't reduce us. But he's equated the two. Yeah, science is. Isn't that easy where he can just equivocate? I mean, in other words, he's going to equivocate scientism, the idea that science is the only source of knowledge, with just science. Science has all this good
what's
stuff.
going to happen
But
when I die.
no one has a problem with science, Richard. Everybody likes science. People have a problem with scientism.
If I met God in the unlikely event after I die, I think the first thing I'd say is, well, which one
He's
are
not.
you? Are you Zeus?
He's
are you
not.
Thor? Are you Baal?
This is the thing,
are you
Richard.
Mithra? Are you Yahweh?
If you wanted to have a personal relationship with
which
an
God
ant
are you?
on an anthill,
And
how on
why
earth
did
would you
take
pull
such
that
great
off?
pains to conceal yourself?
It would be nigh impossible. Okay, so the difference between us and the supposed Christian God is greater than the difference between us and ants. And the reason why that is because if there was a God who was closer to us, and and we were more distant from ants than we were from God, then we could imagine an even greater God. And that God who, the Christian God, could imagine an even greater God than himself, and we would all really worship that greater concept, So the point is from the Christian perspective, God has to be has to have maximal greatness. There can't possibly be anything greater. So that's the point. This is a being who, when he does things, we should constantly be saying to ourselves, I have no idea why that happened. That if it wasn't God, then maybe it wouldn't be like that. But since it's God, we have to say, this is unexplainable to me. I don't understand what this is. In other words, a universe with the Christian God would look undesigned to us because we can't understand God's designs. And the amazing thing would be whenever we do, we should hold on to those truths as the most precious in the world.